obviously you've put together a piece of content that is designed to at least be an introduction to the Bitcoin rabbit hole, maybe even a tutorial for starting your journey down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. So it's for a lay audience.
It's for a lay audience.
How do you approach this concept if you're just verbally interacting with a layperson and they're like, hey, what's up with this money thing? Like, lay it on me. How do you...
I've got a good 30 minutes to you.
What if you've got just the elevator pitch and it's just you? Like, how do you... Because this is something, in the interest of educating more Bitcoin educators, I think this is an art that we're constantly trying to dial in. And so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so, similarly with the video, I've tried to give someone a story or an equivalent, which is not necessarily exactly how the real world works. Although, the cause and effect absolutely is, but it's more like wrapping it in a story. And you think about the story and you remember a story rather than a lecture.
Sure.
And so when people are wondering about the money or have this misconception, it's like, how do you give them a little example which is in the same ballpark and has a comparison that they can then think, okay, well, yeah, I get that. And so, one of them is, and this is a conversation I had actually with someone in a venture capital firm. Right? I was having a chat with them and he said, inflation is good. Right. Okay. And I said to him that if you, forget about money. If we were going to play a board game right now, and that board game, I could change the rules whenever I want. Who's going to win the board game? He said, well, you're going to win the board game. I said, okay, so who's going to lose? So, well, I'm going to lose, obviously. Okay, so why would you let them do that with the money? And then it's like, okay, well, yeah. Yeah, but it's like it's just like a very simple thing, and obviously not the same, but
pretty damn close. You could argue that money is the points we're competing for in economic games. And if there's one entity that can just award new points arbitrarily, well, that's the power to print points is the power to win in perpetuity. And so it's, power to pick winners and losers, basically. And so that's not fair, right? Like, intuitively, that's not a fair game. You would never play that game.
You wouldn't. You would never even...
You'd never set foot in that casino.
You would never even start.
Yeah.
And if you were playing that game, you realized I could change the rules at any point in time, what would that then mean about your mentality in that game?
Right.
Would you be playing it properly? No.
It's not even a game at that point.
You wouldn't be playing. You wouldn't be engaging. Right. You'd be thinking about something else.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we see. Like another one that I use sometimes is helping people understand the thought around the impact of money on a system, even if the money's not washing around explicitly in the system. And it's, imagine you're playing Monopoly and somebody has got their hand in the bank and they take a load of money out and they just pop it next to their pile. Right? And everyone can see it. No one else's money changes. What's going to happen to the cost of the houses in the game? Or just even the guy who can take the money out of the Monopoly box has got his hand resting on the box. What does that mean about the next price at which a house changes hands? Everyone's like, well, I'm not going to sell it for the price I was going to do 2 minutes ago because now he's got his hand on the box.
Yeah.
And this is like these little snippets maybe just help people think about little aspects of these things. Like, don't give them the whole picture, but at least give them that starting point. Think, okay, well, maybe there's something in that. Maybe I need to think a bit more and then read or something. But everyone's got their go-to handful of these things.
No, but these are. They come back to the big red button metaphor, right? Yeah. Which is like, it goes from being a game where for a game to be iterable and to be playable time and time again, like the rules have to be basically fixed and unchanging.
Yeah.
At least from game to game, right? Like maybe, you can play Uno a few different ways, but you don't play, the old saying, right? You can't change the rules in the middle of a card game. The rules for that game have to stay constant and immutable for fair play to work. If they're not, if the rules are mutable and changeable, then it degenerates into something else. It becomes like a political struggle, right? Where you're now going to like violently oppose one another to control those rules, because the power to control those rules is the power to win absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a good, very good analogy for what we see in the world, right? Global military struggling to control the economic system, right? To basically have the most gold. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. Well, the United States, at least on paper, hasn't been audited in a long time. We have
There's
the
some
most
question
gold.
marks over that stuff at the moment, isn't there?
Exactly. But that is sort of it, right? Like we play this, it's not so nice to call, global geopolitical struggles and warfare a game, but we call them war games, right? Yeah. We're struggling within the confines of the laws of physics, right? There are rules that are unchangeable that we compete within. And we do put points on the board with money, basically, right? Like if your country cannot fund the war machine, well, then eventually they sign a treaty and they surrender.
Which used to be the case.
Yes.
Which used to be the case. I mean,
until you introduce the big red button, which extends the war chest beyond the country's balance sheet into the pockets of all the citizens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's always tricky comparing the present with the past because, there's always the drastic technological difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so, talking about wars now versus wars 100 years ago, there wasn't the ability to wage total war in the way that there is today.
Yeah.
And so you have to caveat all those comparisons with that. But, 100 years ago, you had to effectively get the population's long-term agreement for maintaining these sorts of international conflicts because ultimately the bill needed to be footed.
Yeah. Right.
And, it wasn't on a scale as it is today because of the firepower involved and the cost involved. It was more, human beings need to be put on the battlefield with ammunition as opposed to, technological cost and long-range weaponry and the like. But when you give yourself the ability to endlessly finance these things without the bill ever coming due, and even more than that, without most people even knowing you're doing it, then just why the natural outcome is that just happens.
Yeah.
That just happens. So even if you had the strongest government, the fact that the big red button existed inevitably means it will get used. Yeah. And once it's used once, you can't put it back in the box.
That's right. Yeah.
Like it just has to be pressed over and over again. And you see this and this is why in the video as well, I deliberately, I went out of my way to make it clear it wasn't a political thing. Right. Because, you look at the charts versus Democrats or Republicans.
Yeah, they're all pretty much.
You can't tell from looking at the chart which one was in power at any point in time because they all do it.
Yeah, they all serve the central bank masters.
They all do it. But I think probably some more than others.
Sure.
But ultimately,
there's nobody that's not doing it. Let's just put it that way.
Exactly. But I think it comes down to self-preservation and incentives as well, though, because no president in power wants to see an economic catastrophe.
Sure. Yeah.
And because they have, I mean, we're talking about the US here, but we could be talking about any government. Because you have a legacy to protect, and you also know it's a question of short-term pain versus long-term pain.
Right.
You won't be around.
That's right. That's the other thing. Right. Yeah. Democracy has this built-in high time preference.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if I could just get through the next 4 to 8 years, print whatever amount of money is necessary to keep things afloat for that long, and then it's the next guy's problem.
Yeah. And we see that very clearly in the UK.
Yeah.
Very clearly in the UK. We've had, several changes to government over the last period, and we've had a fairly drastic one now, but the previous one where Labour went out and the Conservatives came in, this is probably, I'll get this wrong, like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. There was a scandal in the UK, and it wouldn't be a scandal as far as the America's concerned, but for the UK, there was uproar because I think someone in the treasury, someone in the Labour government that was leaving had just left a sticky note on the desk for the incoming Conservative equivalent saying, "Sorry, all the money's gone," or something like that.
Wow.
It was like so flippant that, you know, like good luck or something. And so it just shows you it's just about making sure we protect our team.
Yeah.
And it'll be the next person's fault. And when they come in, we'll shout at them for all these impacts. And you see this in the US with, you know, the Trump administration now, people going after them from the Democrat side about the cost of living and stuff. It's like, okay, well, these things are not an on and off switch that you did something yesterday and it impacts it today. It's a cumulative effect over time. And so, but trying to help the population unpick that and identify cause and effect, especially when it's over this accumulated time period, it's just incredibly difficult.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.